And we are live with another edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside, as always, by my co-host Andrew Johnson. And Andrew, it is a very special time here on the All Gas No Break Sports Show, as we are going to be running our third annual NBA mock draft here on the show today. And it's going to be an interesting draft upcoming this Wednesday, where, of course, the big story going into the draft is the sensational player Cooper Flagg, who more than likely will be the number one pick in this year's NBA draft. And the story of how we've gotten to this draft lottery is also something to note about how the team that won the lottery still irks a lot of people how they got to this point in the season and how they have the number one pick in the draft. Of course, 1.8 percentage odds to get that number one pick. They have the number one pick, and the Dallas Mavericks will be on the clock in just a few short days.
Yeah, I like the lottery system. I think they fixed the way that the draft works because I was sick of tanking teams. Listen, I've said this a million times before, but the Philadelphia 76ers and the process ruined the NBA draft lottery for everyone else. You know, Sam Hinkie thought he was a smarter man than everyone else and just go out there and deliberately tank games. And I've had this grievance once again. Jakar Sampson, St. John's legend, was playing point guard for the 76ers during that process season. The guy it was a 6'9" power forward in college, and he was playing point only for a couple games though. But it shows the ridiculousness of that season and what was kind of going on there. And that's why we have this draft lottery, and that's why the top teams are not guaranteed to get the top players. And I think that's good because you have a team like the Wizards. They're complaining, and I've said this again before that we deserve to get it because you're bad. Like no, like you tried getting Kyle Kuzma, you tried getting Jordan Poole, you've had multiple top three picks, including the last year's the guy that should have went number one overall said I'm not gonna go play in Atlanta, so he came to Washington instead. So you pretty much got the number one pick last year, and you've gotten the number multiple top five picks this decade alone, probably more so than any other franchise. So a team like Washington that drops down from potentially getting the number one pick or one of the favorites to get the number one pick to going down to six, I really don't have sympathy for that.
Yeah, and now we go into this lottery of or shouldn't say lottery, but going into this draft of coming, and the big story, as I mentioned, is Cooper Flagg, the sensational player out of Duke. But there's also a lot of good talent in this draft as well, outside of just Cooper Flagg himself. You have the two Rutgers stars and Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe out of Baylor, Trey Johnson. Those are the projected top five picks, or just at least the top five player pool of talent. You also have Jeremiah Fears out of Oklahoma. You have what Knipple out of Duke as well. Yeah, Derek Queen out of Maryland. You have a bunch of good players in this draft that when it comes down to it, even if you aren't able to get Cooper Flagg, which a lot of teams won't be able to, you're still going to have a potential really good draft upcoming this upcoming week. So it's a lot to look into, and that's why for us, it's going to be our third annual mock draft. We've done three for the NFL. This will be number three for the NBA. And Johnson, you have the luxury of having the number one pick, and you'll be going with the odd picks in this year's NBA draft.
Yeah, and I do want to say one thing about Dylan Harper. He'd probably be a number one pick in, I would probably say, three or four other drafts this last decade. If you
Yeah.
take a look at the list of number one overall picks, um, I guess where can we start of number one overall picks? Obviously, the number one overall pick is going to be Cooper Flag this year. The spoiler alert, that is going to be my pick before I go into this. But if you take a look at the last decade, he would have went number one last year over Zachary Richardson. He would have went, I think, over Markel Fultz, better prospect wise. He would have went over Andrew Wiggins. So that's three right there, right? Those are the three. And obviously, I think he's a better prospect than Aiton, who was the number one pick too. So that's three or four picks over the last 10 drafts prior to this one.
Right.
That he would have been, the number one overall pick. Would he go over AE? No. Would he go over Cade or Parallel, Victor Wembanyama, Zion? No. Cat? Probably not. Ben Simmons? Even though we know how Ben Simmons turned out, he wouldn't have won over Ben Simmons. But Harper would have been the number one pick in probably three or four picks this last decade. So, San Antonio's going to get a good one, assuming at number two. But I guess with the official number one pick, Cooper Flag is going to go to the Dallas Mavericks. It's going to be very interesting because I've said this multiple times. If I was them, I would trade Cooper Flag, but I don't think they're in a. I guess in a. I guess they want to build towards the future. Is what I'm trying to say here, because I don't think they'll be ready to contribute on immediately at the level to win a championship. Because I
Right.
think they need a true third piece alongside Kyrie and Anthony Davis. And if I'm Dallas on draft day and if I can get a bona fide top 20 player for Cooper Flag, I would take that deal.
Well, I think the luxury of having this for Dallas, and especially for Cooper Flagg, is that if Flagg was to go to a team like Washington or Charlotte or Utah, you're expecting him to be as the guy for your team most
Day
likely.
one.
The good thing for Cooper Flagg is that he goes into Dallas where you don't have to be the number one option because you already have Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis when healthy, obviously, but you already have two top solid players on the top of your roster. And once Klay Thompson comes back, that's another guy you could insert that could get you some points. So if you look at, what the five could be for Dallas next year with adding a Cooper Flagg, you go with Kyrie, you go with AD, you go with Klay Thompson, you go with Cooper Flagg, and then it depends on what you're looking at that final position to become a starter. So it's not a bad pick. Obviously, it makes sense. Cooper Flagg has been touted to be the number one pick for a couple of years now, even since he was in high school. So it makes the most sense.
Yeah, and I think you can go straight into the second pick now.
Yeah, that's the San Antonio Spurs who almost won the lottery again after already getting Victor Wembanyama a couple years ago. And you look at their roster; they are going to be an interesting team to look forward to. Johnson in the Western Conference. They added De'Aaron Fox last season. Yeah, Victor Wembanyama, as I just mentioned as well, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, and Jeremy Sokan. So it really is tough to decipher what exactly they're going to be looking at in the draft. They're more than likely going to be taking one of the two Rucker players in Dylan Harper or Ace Bailey. So it really comes down to what are you looking forward to the most to trying to get out of these players. For me, as I look at I look at this roster and what the Spurs are more than likely going to do. Excuse me for a oh, got a little choked up right there. Excuse me.
Getting
Um,
emotional of the draft already.
Yeah, Chef getting me so emotional. But I also forgot to mention last year's Rookie of the Year, Stephon Castle, who had a nice year. So I would say their guard position is good enough right now as it is. I kind of want to lead towards Ace Bailey because it really comes down to do I think Harper, if they get drafted him, would he be the shooting guard of this team?
I mean, this is what I'm gonna say.
Yeah,
Vassell's a natural small forward. So is Keldon Johnson. And
right,
the problem with all this is um, you're not going to start either of these guys this year. I
right.
think
They're
they're
not
too
starting no matter what.
loaded at the forward position because when you think about it, they have Vassell, Keldon Johnson, and Jeremy Sohan all under the age of like 26. That they're going to be there for the medium future, at least for the next kind of 2 or 3 years.
Right,
And then you have a guy like Julian Champagny, which when he's given minutes, he's been great. He's one of the better shooters on this team, and he's going to be the odd man out here because if whoever they draft here, whether it is Harper or Bailey, Champagny's the odd man out here because you know you're gonna have. There's only two constants on this team right now. That's De'Aaron Fox getting 35 minutes a game at point guard, and Victor Wembanyama getting 35 minutes at center. Spots 2, 3, and 4 are going to be made up of currently Stephon Castle, which you said, reigning rookie of the year, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sohan. Those are, the projected that they'll probably get collectively 30 minutes a game between all of them. So Vassell gets
right.
30, Johnson, Sohan get 30, and then you have Castle get 15 minutes a game off the bench at point guard and 15 off shooting guard. That's your guard position done. So then you have Champagny. I mean, I just don't know what they're going to do here. And
I think the
I
other
would say
issue.
I would say Harper would be here because he could
Well,
play shooting guard and small forward.
here's the reason why I'm leaning towards Harper also is that keep in mind, De'Aaron Fox is going to be an unrestricted free agent in 2026, 2027. So I don't know exactly if they're going to resign him yet, because at that point he'll be 29 years old. They could obviously resign him. He's still not, it's not that he's going to be older. He'll be a little bit older, but not like he's like at the point of the end of his career. It's really going to come down to, are they looking at Fox as the long term solution if you already have Castle and you think he's going to be highly touted? I think I'll go with Dylan Harper. I think just because of the flexibility of how many positions he could potentially play. You mentioned he could play maybe small forward. Right now, he's listed as a guard, but he has the length to play that position. And he had a great year last year at Rutgers, averaging over 19 points a game, a good rebounder and assist player as well. I think it just makes the most sense just because the flexibility makes probably the most sense for San Antonio in that spot.
All right, so Dylan Harper lock in the pick for San Antonio here.
That leaves you now with the
Average
Philadelphia 76ers at three.
average 19 and a half, 4 and 4 on almost 50% from the field as a true freshman for Rutgers, 19 years old. So that is going to lead us to Philadelphia. And Philadelphia desperately is lacking forward depth on this team. That's what I'm saying. They have Paul George, they have Kelly Oubre, and I don't even know who they're starting at power forward at this point. I mean, it's just kind of ridiculous. They have lots of guards. They have Maxi. They have Lonnie Walker. You don't know what's going to happen with Quentin Grimes. I think Kyle Lowry is not going to be on the team. I think he signed with the Raptors, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me on that.
What was the
So I
question?
kind
So,
of
I was
Kyle
looking at
Lowry's
the
not coming
roster.
back to this team, right?
I
He's
don't
going back
think
to
so.
he's going back to
I don't
Toronto.
think it makes sense anyway. You have McCann also coming, keep in mind, off the bench. And Quinton Grimes was pretty good for them last year in the little cup,
Yeah, we don't know
the
what's
extended
happening with him
period of
though.
time with him. That's true
So
also.
even though Ace Bailey is allegedly the better player in this, he should go number 3. I could really see him dropping to like as far down as 10, but I don't think he's going to drop as far as 10. Kind of like he has some attitude issues. He's not doing workouts. He lied on, well, I shouldn't say he, but Rutgers lied about the way they listed his height. And you can't say, oh, well, Rutgers made an honest mistake because kind of, bump up his draft stock a little bit more because the same thing happened with Nikola Topic. His measurements were inflated by his own club too.
Yeah,
Dylan Harper was accurately measured, or roughly. I think he was like listed at 6'6". I think he's like 6'5" without shoes, and but Ace Bailey was like listed at 6'10". He's 6'7". So like that's a major difference. Like that's not a rounding error. We're like, oh yeah, it was off by half an inch. That's kind of severe because they try to make him out to be a 6'10" small forward like Kevin Durant. But
right.
meanwhile, he's probably more like Otto Porter Jr. In the I'm saying like skill wise, but just like kind of like as a prospect right now. So with that, all that being said, I'm going to take the other true freshman guard here with VJ Edgecombe here.
Okay.
I think he's going to he's going to fit in well with this Philadelphia 76ers team. And I think Edgecombe is going to be an excellent addition here. I'm going to hate to see him as a Knicks fan because he already torched us in Bahamas last year as a St. John's fan. But VJ Edgecombe has all the tools necessary to be a dominant off-ball guard in the league today. And I don't think they're going to re-sign Quentin Grimes, so I think he'll kind of step into that Quentin Grimes role immediately for this
Mm,
club.
okay. Yeah, I think there's a good conversation you could have right there with Edgecombe and Bailey because I don't think there's much of a difference, in my opinion, between the two players. So I don't think you realistically can go wrong if you go with one of the two. I think it comes down to just preference and what you're looking for the most out of that position. And then that leads us then to pick number 4, which is Charlotte, which they're in the pretty much same spot. I think if both play, if one player goes off, then you're perfectly fine with Ace Bailey in this spot if you're Charlotte. You look at their roster, you have LaMelo Ball, obviously is their star player. Mark Williams did get traded at one point during the season last year, never went through due to, I believe it was injury concerns or a failed physical, if I remember correctly.
That
You
is
have
correct.
Miles Bridges at the small forward / power forward, depending on where they play him. Brandon Miller, of course, we have to see what his issues are going. So I'm looking at it like this. You have Brandon Miller coming back. You have Miles Bridges probably going to play power forward, and Miller comes back and plays small forward. That probably leaves you to taking a shooting guard at this point, or you need some kind of guard. So if if you're looking at Ace Bailey, do you want him to play shooting guard, or are you thinking of more of as a small forward type of role? Because
Well,
that's probably what the Hornets need. But go ahead.
here's the thing. I think Miles Bridges can play power forward too. That's the
Right,
thing.
that's what I'm saying. I think Miller's going to play
Yeah.
the 4. Excuse me, Bridges will play the 4. Miller will play the 3. They need a shooting guard more than likely, and I don't know if Bailey necessarily is going to be that guy that maybe you want to be your shooting guard. I think more for me, and this probably kind of lies into your narrative where Bailey may be falling in the draft. I think this would be Trey Johnson out of Texas being the pick here at number 4. So I'm going to go with Trey Johnson 19.9 points per game last year for the Longhorns. A really nice outside shooter for the Charlotte Hornets that they desperately need because they need someone outside of the Melo Ball to be that outside scorer. I think Trey Johnson could be the perfect guy to do that for this team. So give me Trey Johnson at pick number 4.
Well, I think the good part is at Utah, you're just picking best player available at this point, which is Ace Bailey. So
Yeah.
Ace Bailey's going to fall to the Jazz number 5, which is it's fine because you're not really starting anyone at small forward, shooting guard, or power forward, uh, or point guard for that matter. I mean, it's really wide open. You got Laurie Markkinen, and that's probably about it on this team.
Right.
Uh, maybe Colin Sexton. You have Jordan Clarkson there, but when it's actually like all said and done, there's gonna be a lot of different positions that they can kind of slide into. So I think Ace Bailey will have an opportunity to play a couple different positions here, maybe shooting guard, small forward, power forward. Um, so Ace Bailey to the Jazz, best pick available, makes the most sense.
It's never a bad thing to go best player available in the draft. We've seen it so many times and so many sports like football and baseball, basketball, even hockey. It's just insane amount. If you get best player available, you're perfectly fine with it. And unfortunately, it leads me to a tough spot with the Washington Wizards because what can you say more about how bad this team is, Johnson? I mean, there are so many glaring needs on this team. I think the only thing you could maybe say that they don't need, I guess Alex Sarr is fine enough for you. That's who you took last year with the number 2 overall pick. Jordan Poole, I guess you don't want to get rid of. I don't know. You have Chris Middleton just got there last year in a trade. You have Malcolm Brogdon as well. Marcus Smart. They added so many veterans, but I think it really comes down to you just look at the team. You're saying to yourself, what exactly can fix this team? And it's not gonna whatever they do this year might help in the long term, but it's not gonna fix their team immediately. They're gonna be bad again next year more than likely. So if I look at it like this and I'm looking at this roster, I think to myself, what exactly should they draft going into the upcoming season? Maybe you could move Alex Sarr to the power forward position and take a center here, or you just go with or you just go with a guard, and you just get ready to eventually replace either Jordan Poole at point guard or whoever you have at shooting guard, or maybe you take a small forward, just replace Chris Middleton. I think they take. I'm gonna go with Con Knipple out of Duke. I think just because he can play shooting guard at small forward, that's two of their glaring needs, in my opinion, at those positions. I think he could insert not immediately into a starting role, but maybe next year could insert to a starting role if used properly and has a nice start to his young career. So give me Con Knipple out of Duke to go pick number 6 to Washington.
Khan going off the board here. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Well,
there's just so many needs on Washington. It's just really tough to decipher what exactly they're going to pick. They're just a really bad team.
and that's going to lead us to the Pelicans here. Pelicans, I have no idea what they're doing here. It depends on the health of this team.
I think it's got to be.
They don't have a center.
Yeah, they don't have a center. I mean, there's one right there for you.
They don't have a center, and you big man out of Duke, Common Maluk. I think that's how you say his name. I'm probably butchering that.
I think you said it right.
Uh, yeah, put him in here. Best player available. They have Zion. You have Dejounte Murray. You have Herb Jones and Trey Murphy when they're healthy. So you got those kind of wings figured out. Um, you have Grand Theft Alvarado still coming off the bench. You have CJ McCollum. So this team needs to get healthy, but they need a big man. And I think that's the big man they're going to need because they're not going to ask him to score because there's plenty of scorers already on this team. They need someone to kind of patrol the paint, play defense, grab rebounds, and that's going to be his job here. So give me Common here out of Duke.
Yeah, I mean, they're another team where it's either they go guard or they're going to go center, probably. But the only reason I say guard is because eventually they got to get rid of CJ McCollum. That
They
contract
have
is
Dejounte
really.
Murray right now, so
Right, but you're going to need another guard after that. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, they still have Jones and Murphy as well, so maybe that's just your replacement at one of those guard positions. But yeah, no, they're in a weird spot right now. The Pelicans are, and we'll see what they do with that pick. And that brings us to the Brooklyn Nets, and they're another team, Johnson, where you look at the roster and you're thinking to yourself, what exactly would they probably do in the draft? I think it probably goes into Ford if I had to guess, because you look at, I mean, they could go guard. I could be completely wrong because you have Cam Thomas at the shooting guard position. That's a nice young player there. I like Day'Ron Sharp and Nick Claxton at their center position. They have Cam Johnson right now at power forward. He could be traded though, depending on what happens in this offseason. They did have Drew Timmy, who was good for a little bit as well during the final portion of the season. And then, when you look at point guard, you have D'Angelo Russell right now as your point guard. Small forward, it's pretty much been a turnstile there as to who exactly is going to play at that position. So I'm looking at it as, and you have to keep in mind, they also have a couple first round picks in the draft. They have this pick 19, pick 26, and pick 27. So,
We're gonna trade a couple of these, but
right,
for fun, we're not gonna trade anything in this.
right,
We're just going to have them all selected. But on they'll probably package. I would say they might package 27, 26, 19 to a team like Washington for number 6. They
right.
might do something like that, but we'll find out.
So I'm trying to think exactly what they would do at this position at pick number 8, and I'm at the point where I'm kind of leading towards taking a guard. I think there might be a little bit more options for them at small forward, maybe later in the draft. And for me, I'm looking at Kasparis Jakasionis. I believe I could have completely butchered that name out of Illinois, but looking at the size of him at guard. I think that makes a little bit more sense for the Nets at that position because you can't. D'Angelo Russell is not going to be your long term, guy at point guard. You need someone to eventually be that type of player, and I think it could be him. Averaged 15 points per game last year, almost 5 assists, and almost 6 rebounds per game for the Fighting Illini. I'm going to go with him at pick number 8 for the Brooklyn Nets.
All right, Casper's off the board, going to the Nets. It was People are saying that this was going to be the Washington Wizards pick, but not in this draft.
Yeah,
All right, we have Toronto, which doesn't have direction right now. They're looking to trade quickly. They're looking to trade R.J. Barrett. You have Scotty Barnes, who's probably the only constant here, and they're looking to trade Jakob Pertl too. So
added Brandon Ingram last year, which I don't know what they're doing with him.
yeah, I mean, I think they'll keep Brandon Ingram because he's on a decent contract, but I think they're
Yeah.
looking to move quickly. I think they're looking to move Barrett, which makes me believe they're going to want to get a guard. So Jeremiah Fears out of Oklahoma is the best guard available here. So let's just put that on the board for Toronto. They could take Fears here with pick number 9.
Yeah, if they're looking at trading the guards, I mean, it makes the most sense. I think it has to be. And then that leads us to pick 10. And it's going to be one of the first, teams, Johnson, where we have a playoff team having a high pick, and that being the Houston Rockets. Of course, they were the number 2 seed in the Western Conference this past season, but they have a first round top 10 selection due to their trade with the Phoenix Suns. So they have the luxury of picking number 10. And look at this roster. If you look at it as a whole, obviously there is a couple things hovering over them where you could get a Giannis Antetokounmpo, depending on, your draft capital as well as your young talent. You also could get Kevin Durant. So those are 2 players to keep in mind. They might not have this pick come the NBA draft, depending on what happens in the next couple of days. Now, you look at the roster after that, you have Jalen Green, Thompson, Jabari Smith Jr., Alperen Sengun. You have Fred Van Vliet at point guard. You did draft Reed Shepard last year, but I don't know necessarily what the vision is or plan is for him right now. Is he going to be the guy after Fred Van Vliet, or is he just going to be part of a trade package for one of those guys I just mentioned earlier on? So it comes down to, I think, what probably Houston would do at this portion. And I think if you're looking at it, I think they're going to look for size and depth on the team because I think you're fine at the guard position just for now. And I'm looking at 2 players in mind. I'm going to lean towards one, and that's going to be Carter Bryant out of Arizona to go with this pick. Didn't really get a lot of, didn't really score a lot last year for the Wildcats, and a little bit not a fairly solid rebounder for that team. But it kind of fits into the narrative of what the Rockets are currently doing right now, where they don't need a big time player that went off in college last season, where they're just trying to take some size and depth for this roster, trying to build around the trenches and trying to make sure that they don't lose in the playoffs like they did this past postseason. And again, this pick could be going to a different team depending on what happens in the next couple of days. For now, I will take Carter Bryant, though, to go pick number 10 to Houston.
Which leads us to pick number 11 here. And the Portland Trailblazers, they have Scoot Henderson, they have Anthony Simons, they have Shadon Sharp, they have Denny Avia, which had a great year for him. He had a breakout
Breakout
year.
year, yeah.
Jabari Walker, you have Jeremy Grant getting up there in age, and you have Robert Williams III, the Time Lord, Donovan Clingan, and DeAndre Ayton. I almost forget DeAndre Ayton's on this team. So they have
He's got to be
plenty of
traded
center
soon.
depth. They have plenty of shooting guard and small forward depth. They kind of need a power forward. There's no really true power forwards here.
I think there's only truly
You,
one, I think.
I mean, you could go with the European prospect Noah Asunge out of France, but I don't think they're going to go there. Uh, I think they'll go with Kyle Murray Boyles out of South Carolina here. He's the only real true power forward. He is undersized, but he did put up 17 and 8 in the SEC as a sophomore. So give me Colin Murray Boyles out of University of South Carolina to Portland here to kind of maybe slot in, at least get spot minutes at power forward here.
Then that leads us to the Chicago Bulls, who had the unfortunate break of losing that coin toss to the Dallas Mavericks, and then they obviously the Mavericks won the lottery. You look at the Bulls roster, you have Josh Giddey, you have Kobe White, Lonzo Ball. Those are your guards that are providing the most minutes for you. Matas Buzilis, the first round pick from last year's draft, you have a small forward. You have Pat Will at the power forward position. And you have right now Nikola Vucevic and Jalen Smith are right now your top two centers. So I'm thinking with those being your top two guys at center right now, I feel like that probably means to me because keep in mind Vucevic is another guy that has been rumored to maybe be getting traded at some point in the next year or two. I could very well see that happening very sooner rather than later. I think the Bulls probably go center at this position. There is a couple of centers right now that are on the board, but I think you have to go with a guy that was pretty dominant in the ACC last year, had a very nice and memorable moment in the NCAA tournament this past March. I'm going to go with Derek Queen out of Maryland to go pick number 12 to Chicago. 16 and a half points per game, almost average a double double, 52.6% field goal percentage. Very solid player for the Terrapins. I think he'd be a nice fit for Chicago at pick 12.
That leads us to pick number 13, going to Atlanta here. Plenty of talent. They just can't figure out what to do here because Trey Young is going to be starting at point guard. Dyson Daniels is emerging as a legit six-man slash starting caliber player. You have Karis LeVert. You have uh, Zachary Richardson. You have Jalen Johnson. You have, guess you need depth at power forward. You have Larry Nance there.
Do they need a shooting guard?
I don't know if it because they have Karis LeVert and they have I'm not really sure what they're gonna be doing there. They have Kobe Buffkin too, and Dyson Daniels could play shooting guard.
Mm.
So I'm not really sure what they're gonna do here. I mean, Dyson Daniels could definitely play shooting. He could probably play 1 to 4 to be honest with you. I think he's so tall at this point, but he's
Yeah.
listed as a point guard. They could go Liam McNeely here, but I think they really do need center depth here. So when I'm taking a look at this, it is kind of hard to I think they're eventually gonna move Dyson Daniels to shooting. I think they're gonna move people up a position here. Um, I don't want to say I'm over picking this, but Chase Richardson out of Michigan State, this could be an overdraft here. He had everything you wanted as a freshman point guard here. Uh, you know, he was efficient from the field. He could score. He's got decent size to play both the one, but be undersized too. I mean, I could go Jace Richardson here, or I could go Liam McNeely because I kind of want versatility here.
I think for me, if I had to pick, I mean, I'm not going to steer you from one guy to the other. I think the only reason I'm leaning towards Richardson is just because I think the Hawks have the depth at forward, but they don't really have as much depth at guard, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's why even though there's better players on the board here, I'm gonna go Jace Richardson. That's the only pick that kind of makes sense here. It could be an over pick, but that's what makes sense.
And that, yeah, I think I just because they're depth. I think that's the only reason. I didn't want to steer you from one guy to the other. I just think they have, with Daniels, Ricochet, Jalen Johnson, you have so many good young forwards. I think you need more guard at that position. You need a backup for Trey Young, maybe a potential starting two. Because, I
Well, we
mean,
need a
again,
starting center more than anything, but I don't think there's any real
yeah,
center
I guess, but
worth
they have,
taking over Richardson.
you still have
It'd be
Capella
him or
and, yeah, you
it'd be
still have
him or
Capella and
Thomas
you have
Sorber
to,
or Danny Wolf, and I would take Richardson over those two at this
yeah,
point in the draft.
yeah. I I don't. I understand what this. I just don't think they're in a spot right now where they're going to trade one. They probably should trade one of those centers soon, but I don't think they're going to just yet. Um, and then that leads us to San Antonio, who already had one of their earlier picks, that being Dylan Harper. I took at number 2, and I think this fits perfectly, Johnson. They already have one big player out of France. There's 2 current players that are here from France, but obviously one of them is a center. I'm gonna go with the other player out of France, that being Noah Asenge, the small forward slash power forward, to go to the San Antonio Spurs. It kind of just
This
fits
is
into
where
the
I had him
narrative.
going too.
Yeah, it
So
kind of just fits
that's
into their
perfect.
narrative of you know, they
And,
take these
he could be
European players and they always just work out for
big
them.
a storm too because they have plenty of depth at that position where they could
Right.
swing, especially at that at number
Like
14. So
he could go back to France and they could have the Euro rights for him, and they could wait on him.
and then now we're getting out of the lottery of Oklahoma City, which again
I mean, what could you add to this team that's already how they
they
are?
have everything. I mean,
Yeah,
you look for a true
this
power forward. I don't
this
really don't know.
obviously could be a trade spot for them too to just get more veteran talent, but I mean, you never know.
I mean, I think you would trade at this point if but I think they're gonna want to get a. I think they're gonna want a shooting
I
guard,
have
maybe.
Yeah, I was gonna say I have there's like 2 players in mind. I think when I look at this team that they probably take at this pick.
Yeah, I think they take Igor Demon out of BYU here.
Okay.
That's what I'm
Yeah, I
gonna
mean,
take with him.
yeah, I think it comes down to he's a shooting guard listed right now, but he easily could play small forward for this team too with
He
the
can play
size.
power forward too.
Yeah,
I
he
mean, if
could
he
play
puts
power
weight on
forward.
in 2 years, he can play power forward.
Yeah, yeah. I think the Thunder really don't have a thing where you're like, oh yeah, they need this. They don't really need anything. They're just trying to add to already a stacked
That's
roster.
best pick available right there. So
Exactly. It's just literally best pick available at that point in this draft. And then that leads us to the Memphis Grizzlies, who have had a very interesting season. Of course, they traded Desmond Bain as of late. Now he is an Orlando Magic player, and they got a bunch of first round picks for that, including this current pick, I believe, right here at pick number 16. So, what do you take if you're Memphis? You probably have to go shooting guard because you just traded Bain. I'm looking at the exact position and who they might take. Uh, I'm between 2 guys at this position.
I know who
If
I would
I
take.
I mean, there's a guy I would like to take, but I think it's a little bit early for him to go in this spot.
Who would that be?
I would say Walter Clayton, but I think it's a little bit early for him.
No, it's too early. I know. I think
Yeah,
Walter Clayton's gonna be one of the steals of the first round.
yeah.
I would
I think
probably take
it's
him, but I know what you mean right here. Too much of a reach.
yeah. I think I'm leaning towards Nick Clifford out of Colorado State. Had a very nice season for the Rams. Averaged almost 19 points per game and almost averaged a double double at that position. Had 9.6 rebounds and 4.4 assists. I think he probably he provides a little bit more than maybe as per se Will Riley, who might be a more traditional shooting guard or slash small forward. I think Clifford might fit that style
So you're
for
going with
the.
Nick Clifford.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Nick Clifford at that pick.
I would have picked McNeely here.
McNeely, yeah,
I would have went McNeely here because I know he could kind of play both positions.
yeah.
Uh, so they need we're up to Minnesota now, pick number 17. They desperately need a power forward. What I mean by that is you have Jay McDaniels starting at small forward. You have Nas Reed, but we don't know what's really going on there. You have a bunch of things going on, but they really don't have power forward depth here. And I don't think they're going to ask for this guy to produce immediately. But Asanul out of Georgia, true freshman power forward. I keep saying true freshman for everyone, but I think every freshman's like 19 years old now,
Yeah,
so like
pretty
everyone's a
much.
true
Pretty
freshman at that.
much.
Yeah, it's not like Cooper Flagg, which is a true freshman, getting drafted at the age of 18. But everyone's just 19 nowadays. So Asanul out of Georgia here, solid season for the Bulldogs. 15-7, got blown out in the first round of the NCAA tournament, but hey, it happens. Um, Give me Asanul going to the Timberwolves here.
Well, then that unfortunately leads me back to Washington. We're back at this roster again. I took Con Knipple with my first pick at pick number 6, kind of knocking out the guard slash little bit of small forward depth. I think if that's the case, they probably will go guard at this position. And I'm looking at a couple guys again. I'm probably going to lean towards Nolan Traore out of France to be that guy they take at this position at pick number 18 to get some more guard depth that they desperately probably need. Because as I mentioned, their guard depth realistically is guys that are aging vets or are veterans that are not really going to provide you anything that probably could provide a little bit more for a different team on a different roster, could get you some draft picks. So I'll go with Nolan Traore that maybe could be a project pick for this Washington Wizards team that desperately needs some help.
Speaking of project picks, we're going back to the Brooklyn Nets, who have multiple picks. Thomas Sorber here, out of Georgetown. I'm gonna say true freshman again, even though this guy
Okay,
is
good if you want.
he's 19 years old. So yeah, true freshman, 15-8 out of Georgetown, solid season. Didn't get better as time went on though, which is a little bit of a red flag. He had an impressive season in the Big East though, 6'10", 255. So he's not NBA body ready yet. If you give him a year of strength training, he could kind of sit behind Drew Timmy or Cam Johnson, whoever they go there. Get spot minutes off the bench, just kind of as a first year player because you're not really expecting to do much right now. But give me Thomas Sorber going number 19 at Brooklyn.
And that leads us to the Miami Heat, who, as we know, Johnson had a very interesting season as well. This pick being from Golden State. And the reason for that being is because of the Jimmy Butler trade. So now this is post Jimmy Butler Miami Heat. You still have Bam Adebayo, who is one of your top two players outside of him and Tyler Hero. You brought in Andrew Wiggins from that trade with Jimmy Butler. Power forward my opinion, is probably the biggest need on this team. Nikola Jovic could be that guy. I don't necessarily know if he is going to be that guy right now. And point guard's also an interesting spot because you have guys like Davion Mitchell and Terry Rozier. So maybe you could get away with that for another season. I think power forward slash maybe small forward might be where they go with this pick. And I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with the. I'm gonna go with Rasheer Fleming out of St. Joseph's to go with this pick. 14.7 points per game last year, averaged 8.5 rebounds as well. A nice shooter for the Hawks of St. Joseph's. I think the only reason again, I don't think I would necessarily take him in general over some of the other guys that are here, but I think that he has such a glaring need at that one position that they have to take him with this pick. So I'm gonna go Rasheer Fleming out of St. Joseph's to go pick number 20.
Okay, so that leads us to the Jazz again, and they need all the help they can get here. We kind of went over them earlier, and
Took Ace Bailey with the 5th overall pick.
yeah, so I think they go best overall player here, and I'm trying to see who that is. I don't think they go Liam McNeely screams like a pick the Jazz would do.
They would, yeah, it does sound like that.
If they didn't have Walker Kessler, they would go Danny Wolf here.
Yeah.
Um, I think I'm gonna go McNeely here. He's fallen a little bit here. He's expected maybe a late lottery pick, and it's pick number 21 now. So Liam McNeely to Utah.
It
He
does
could. They need depth. That's what they need. So
it does scream Utah Jazz pick. It does scream that.
screams like future Gordon Hayward. So get Liam McNeely. You are a member of the Utah Jazz.
And then it goes back to the Atlanta Hawks. So we took Jace Richardson earlier on with the 13th overall pick. And Johnson, this kind of fits to perfectly what you were talking about earlier, where you said they needed big depth at that center position. I think this is perfect because they were able to get a guard earlier on in the draft, and behold, they have two centers right here at this, or a couple of centers, I should say, at this position. You have Beringer out of France, you have Danny Wolf out of Michigan, uh, Maxime Renaud out of Stanford as well. So you have your pick at center at this current portion of the draft. I'm gonna go with the guy that no offense to the other two. I'm just gonna go with the guy that I know the best, and I'm gonna go with Danny Wolf out of Michigan to go with this pick. 13.2 points per game last season, almost average a double double, and doing that in the Big Ten is no joke either. And it's 7 foot center. I mean, you can't really go wrong with that either. Going to be a nice block, rim defender for this Atlanta Hawks team. That if they were to trade a Capella or a Nyeka Okongwu, more than likely would be Capella. I think would be a nice guy to insert to be your either 1A or 1B center at your position. So give me Danny Wolf to go pick 22.
And this kind of works perfectly with New Orleans because they needed center most importantly, and we don't know what they're doing with Dejounte Murray, CJ McCollum, Walter Clayton. This is the
Playing him.
pick here. This is the pick here for New Orleans. So Walter Clayton with number 23 to
I
New
mean,
Orleans makes the most sense.
what a tournament
That's
he
a
had
that,
last year.
yeah. This is potential steal right there. And they don't know what they're doing at either backcourt position,
I
and
wish the
Walter Clayton can
Knicks
play
had
both.
a first round pick because I would love to snag a guy like that in the draft. I think he could be, as you said, the steal of the draft for any NBA
Steal
team
of
in
the
the first
first
round.
round.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really, really solid player that led the Florida Gators to a national championship this past March in the NCAA tournament. And that brings us back to the Oklahoma City Thunder at pick 24. And we talked about it earlier. I mean, what exactly did this team need? You already have such a good amount of talent. I think you just go best player available probably at this point. I'm going to go with Joan Beringer out of France. I think it's just best player because you really don't need much. You already got a guard earlier. I'm just going to go with a big man here at pick number 24.
Yeah, someone they could stash.
Yep. That leads us
So
then
they
to
have two.
Orlando.
They have the stash, and they have Demon out of BYU. So
Right.
it's not really guys are going to use right now. And now we're going back to the Magic right now. So the Magic, very interesting. Uh, don't know what they're doing here. They have Franz Wagner and they have Mo Wagner. They have Paolo. So it seems like maybe their front court's a little set here. I'm not really sure. I would probably go for guard here. They would have if Walter Clayton was here, they would definitely snag him up. But Will Riley out of Illinois makes the most sense. Best player available. They don't know what they're doing as really shooting guard or small forward outside of Franz Wagner. We don't
Yeah.
know what Jalen Suggs is going to be doing next year.
Right.
Uh, so give me Will Riley here out of Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, they would obviously love Walter Clayton. I mean, bring the hometown guy back, or I should say hometown guy, but bring back the Florida Gator to stay in state with Orlando. That'd be a great storyline if the Magic were able to do that. And then Johnson, that brings us to the Brooklyn Nets. They're going to have back-to-back picks here. They have pick 26 and pick number 27. We have taken Kasparis Jakasionis with the 8th overall pick. Thomas Sorber would pick number 19. So you're looking at what we've done already for them in this draft. You've taken a guard. You've taken a center. They both have some size and depth to
Oh,
them as
Sorber
ready.
could play. Sorber's a power forward, isn't he?
Right.
Technically.
He's listed as a center slash power forward, so he could play either or, I believe. So I'm thinking you probably go more forward at this position. Maybe a guy that could play small forward slash power forward. And it could be a guy maybe you just try to, stack and stash for you in the long term run. I think with my pick, and then we'll see what you do with their second overall selection. Uh between a couple guys here, because there's a couple small forwards I'm looking at. Hmm. I'm leaning towards Adu Thiaro out of Arkansas because he gives you that depth at both small forward slash power forward. Average over 15 a game and almost 6 rebounds per game for the Razorbacks. I'm gonna go with Adu Thiaro out of Arkansas. That's gonna be my pick.
All right, so you're going with the do for the Razorbacks. Average 15 and 6, 6'8" small forward slash power forward here, and All right, so if the Nets are not keeping all these picks, but if they are keeping all these picks,
Yeah.
one of them is going to be Euro stash, and that's going to be Hugo Gonzalez out of Spain.
Uh,
So this is the Euro stash. They're going to keep him over there for a year or two, see what he does. And if they're good in a year or two, they'll sign him to his rookie deal, and it'll be nice and dandy. But other than that, yeah, any Euro pick would be here. So Noah Penda would be fine here. Ben Saraf at Israel would be fine here. But I'm going Hugo Gonzalez, best pick available.
all right, Johnson. You ready for me to spoil your day?
Sure.
Boston Celtics pick 28. I can see the writing on the wall already. Ryan Kalkbrenner will be the Boston Celtics pick at 28.
That is a very Celtics pick.
That just screams Boston Celtics. And remember who they took the year prior. Remember who they took before out of Creighton.
Baylor Shireman.
Yeah, so just keep in mind that's probably what the Celtics will do. Keep the only reason is because Luke Cornet is an expiring free agent. Kristaps has been very injury prone, and we don't know the status of Al Horford. It makes so much sense to take a center, and you already have one Creighton Blue Jay. You might as well add another one in Kalkbrenner. So give me him at 28.
Well, I thought you could go with this next guy, who I'm going to take for the Suns, Maxine Renaud out of Stanford,
I
because
would
the
have,
Suns
but yeah,
desperately need a center. So this is
yeah.
the guy, 7'1", average 20 and 10, 22-year-old senior here, ready for the NBA. So give me Maxine Renaud to Phoenix, and then it's going to lead you to the number 30 pick, and that's the
Los
Clippers
Angeles
pick via
Clippers.
OKC.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the Celtics, I would have taken Renaud. I just saw, looking at Culper, I'm like, the narrative I can just
Yeah,
see the
it,
Celtics
it, it
doing
makes
that
sense. That's a Celtics pick.
just to piss both of us off because we already don't like the
And listen,
organization.
he's a great player. He's
No, he is.
defensively, he's an absolute monster in the paint,
Yeah,
which they desperately need. And he's a smart passer,
yeah.
and he's a great rebounder. So it makes a lot of sense.
So I look at the Clippers and I'm thinking to myself, what could they probably do at this portion? Because you have Ivica Zubac, who had a really breakout year, in my opinion, last season for this Clippers team. Kawhi Leonard, when healthy, is one of the best players in the NBA. Norman Powell, you talk about breakout seasons. He had an unbelievable breakout season for this Los Angeles Clippers team. James Harden, of course, brings you so much good talent at that guard position. I look at where maybe power forward maybe could be the problem for this team. Maybe that's where you go at this port, this spot. There is a lot of good, forward depth. I look at it, but they could go guard because keep in mind, we don't know exactly is James Harden
Well,
going to be there long term. But go ahead.
no, go ahead. Fix your pick. Finish your pick.
I'm debating at the. I'm looking at. I think I'm going to go guard at this position, and this could be just a bias pick because of what I saw out of this guy last season, and we both saw this guy a lot last season. But I could see him being a Clipper. I don't know if they would take him. I'm gonna go with Cam Jones out of Marquette,
That is a reach. Ooh.
but it could be a guy that could be a steal because he was a very high scorer out of Marquette. You're not asking him to play immediately for that team, but if you're gonna replace, you don't know what the stats is gonna be of Harden. You don't know what the stats is gonna be of Norman Powell. Like, are those gonna be are you going to bring them back sooner rather than later? Because those guys are getting up there in age. You might want to get a guard now instead of
Well,
waiting
maybe
in
it's
the next
not
couple
that
of
big
years.
of a reach. I
Yeah,
had Cam Jones maybe going around 40, so maybe it's not that big of a reach.
he
Uh,
probably will. Probably will. I'm just looking at it as
he'll
they
be an early second
probably
rounder.
right. I think they just need to take a guard only because they're not going to be able to do it like they probably find someone at the end of the second round. But I feel like if you can grab a guy like that average 20 a game in the big or near 20 a game in the Big East, that could also give you some rebounding and assists, I think you have to take that because that's basically, what you like out of your guards already when you have a guy like James Harden. I think that would just make the most sense that they go with Jones at that spot. But what were you
Well,
going to say before I made the
well,
pick?
now that we completely finished our mock draft here, and spoiler alert, we're doing it before the NBA finals. That's why we haven't really said anything. We're gonna release this after the finals on Tuesday. That's gonna be, but the time this recording is about 12:49 right now, Sunday, 6:22.
Oh, I just
Kevin Durant
saw it.
has been traded.
I
That's what I
just
wanted
saw
to
it
say a
now.
couple minutes ago. Kevin Durant goes from the Phoenix Suns to the Houston Rockets. The Suns get Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, the number 10 pick in the 2025
So,
draft, and
so there
five
it is.
second round picks.
We were just
There's
talking
the
about
Kevin
it
Durant
too.
trade. There it is.
We were literally saying it, so it makes a lot more sense because now you know the Suns will have that 10th overall pick. So I think Carter Bryant still fits perfectly for that spot because they're going to
He
need a
does.
small forward now. But yeah, so let's talk about this before we wrap up the show here today. So we knew Durant was going to be in trade talks, and there was the rumor that the trade was going to go down. As you mentioned, this is recording as of June 22nd, Sunday, or it's either today or tomorrow. And Jalen Green was obviously the focal point for being the guy that might get traded from Houston to the Phoenix Suns. And then you get Dylan Brooks, who's going to replace Durant right now. But if you get Carter Bryant, I mean, that's a guy that's for your long term run. You get the number 10 overall pick, and then you get 5 seconds. So I think this is a solid trade for both parts. Obviously, the Rockets are trying to win an NBA championship after being the number 2 seed this past season. Phoenix, we know, is rebuilding. There's no surprise there. And getting Jalen Green, I mean, hopefully he had a solid season last year for Houston, but maybe could be the guy that maybe turns the Suns franchise around. They still have Devin Booker, keep in mind too, so they still have a good chance to be turn around that franchise. But yeah, very very wild trade that now gives the Rockets a lineup of Van Vliet, Thompson, Durant, Jabari Smith, and Sengun. It's a very solid five.
Yeah, it's shocking. Now, Nick, if you had to pick one player in the second round to be a sleeper, who would that be?
One player in the second round to be a sleeper.
Yeah, he's going to be the breakout player of the second round. It always happens.
That's tough. Let me think of some players.
I have mine. It's going to be RJ Lewis. If he can just fix his
Yeah,
attitude and get him to stop chucking, he's athletically speaking, he's excellent. He's in
I might have two
top
players for
50
you.
percentile when
Yep.
it comes to players. He's got the all the tools. He's a smart passer. He can rebound. He can play physical defense. He just has to get a better attitude, which is coachable, and he has to stop chucking. And if Rick Pitino could instill that, that's why it's kind of a red flag. But if he could fix those things, I think he'll be a steal in the second round.
So I have two. I might give you two players here because I think that you could see that these guys were really solid last year in college, and I think that they could transition their game into the NBA and continue that way. We already see what one Nemhard could do in the NBA. Why not maybe what a second one could do? Ryan Nemhard out of Gonzaga could be a sneaky pick in the second round at the guard position because he doesn't necessarily have to be good now. He is a tenured senior out of Gonzaga who has been known to have some great guard play in years past. And why not have another guard go to the NBA and be another solid NBA player? I could see Nemhard being one of those guys that maybe not is not talked about right now, but could be a solid NBA player. And a second guy that I could look at maybe being someone that might be one to be looking at in the NBA draft for a couple teams. I think just because of how he did in the SEC. I know you're going to hate the pick because you were not a fan of his last year going into the tournament. I think if depending on the team he goes to, and right now he's projected to go around pick 35 to 40. Johnny Broom out of or Janai Broom, excuse me, Janai
John,
Broom
Not, yeah, that's a good pick.
out of Auburn, I think could be good depending on the team he goes to.
My whole
If
thing
he
is he's
was
a little old. That's the whole thing.
right,
He's like 25
that's
years
the
old. So this is
that's
who
the
he is at
only
this point.
that's the only issue I have with him is that he is old. He's on the older side. I think it depending on if he were to go to a team like that made the playoffs last season, or if he were to go like let's say if he
He'll
went
be
to
23. So 25 is a little bit of a exaggeration. But he's
let's
been
say
in
if he went
college
to
since
like
like
if
COVID.
he went to Golden State at pick 41, like that would be a really good pick for Golden State because they kind of need more size and depth at that center position. And he's a 6'10 center slash power forward. Might play a little bit more power forward than that center position. But I think could be a sneaky pick if, let's say, a Golden State per se were to take him in the second round. But it depends. It really depends on what the team he goes to. That's how I feel about it. Um, but yeah, going to be a very interesting draft. And as you mentioned, there's always those second round guys that pan out and turn out to be a gem in the NBA that we don't talk
So
about necessarily at the
listen to
start
this
of this.
potential depth lineup for the Rockets.
Yeah.
Amen Thompson, Kevin Durant, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith Jr., Alperen Sengun.
Yeah. I think it's perfect for the Rockets that they didn't have to trade Smith, because remember when you were talking about the Giannis trade, they would have to give up Green and they would have to give up Smith and then the picks. The fact that they only had to give up the one pick was big. Now I'm also seeing another rumor that that the Suns could trade Green after also. So
Flipping
they,
for
they
picks.
they might flip him to go somewhere else. So keep that. That's
Yeah,
also
I could
something to
see that.
note. It would make a lot of sense. It just depends on what team that
Who
would be.
owns their
But
picks right now?
the Suns you're talking about?
Yeah, it's the Nets that own their picks, right?
Well, the Suns got their pick back. That was the pick number 10 was their pick.
No, but the rest of their picks, who currently owns them?
Let
Is
me
it all
see.
Houston? It's not all Houston, is it?
So the Suns have their pick from the Cavs. Their original pick was the Rockets pick, and then that's that. I'm looking to see what their future picks are. You're talking about the future picks, right?
Yeah.
Let's see if I can find that real quick before we hop off the air.
Because what I'm trying to say is, I think they should trade Jalen Green for their own first round picks again.
Yeah, I mean they were the good thing is that they got their pick back at least this year. That's at least a good thing. Let's say 2026 they own. They have so yeah, it's I'm looking at it right now. It says Washington has the right to swap its 2021
Oh,
2026
2027.
first.
Yeah, 2027. Houston still has it.
Yeah.
Um, Oof. It's rough.
Yeah, so they don't have all their picks, but they at least got one pick back. But yeah, I'm looking to see if I got a further confirmation. More favorable Phoenix. Yeah, so it looks like they have their pick next year. It's basically a pick swap. It looks like 2027 is to Houston. Um and I think they have there's a bunch of picks that they don't really own. So this is kind of like one where I think you knew you were going to get a bunch of first round picks because Durant's almost at the end of his career. You're basically doing this to say, listen, let's get back our first round pick in this year's draft, get a top 10 player. Hopefully, it's a guy that's going to pan out and will work out for us. And now you get the notion that they're going to go small forward more than likely at that position because of trading Durant. Now you need someone there at that position. But you never know. I mean, if they flip Jalen Green, depending on if they keep him or not, then maybe that's who they get at small forward. I probably will go more likely they'll trade him for picks, but we'll have to see. Dylan Brooks maybe could just be that guy for now until they figure out that position long term.
And I think that's gonna do us right here on this episode of the All Gas No Break Sports Show.
Yeah, well, let's at least be grateful, Johnson. We were still recording before the news broke. We usually miss the news just as we finish recording.
Yeah,
That's
a
a
little bit
first.
different this time around.
That might be a first. That might be a second. The only other notion I remember that we had breaking news happen during the show, I believe, was when we did an NFL free agency. I think that's when the Giants got like Brian Burns or something, and we didn't miss it as the show was going on. That was
Correct.
like the only other time I can remember that happening. But yeah, no. Um, Draft's going to be now a little bit more interesting upcoming this week with Kevin Durant now being a Houston Rocket. Jalen Green, we'll have to see what his future holds now. Right now, currently in Phoenix, but might be going to a different team in the next couple of days. So a lot of stuff to talk about in the next couple of days of this NBA draft. But of course, the NBA draft itself is a very big spectacle. We already have had one trade go down. More than likely, we'll see a couple more trades go down in the next couple of days before the draft kicks off. And as you mentioned earlier on, we're still waiting the results of the NBA Finals. That game takes place as of this recording on Sunday, June 22nd. That game takes place tonight at 8 p.m. And Johnson and I will be back very shortly afterwards to recap that NBA Finals and break down what's going to happen going into next season. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about the Kevin Durant trade, or maybe more about Jalen Green getting traded if any news gets broken down in the next couple of days. So we'll have to tune in and find out what happens there. But for all of us in the All Gas Nut Break Sports Show, that is going to do it for this edition of our third annual NBA mock draft, where now we'll have to see what happens in this NBA draft with, Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, Bailey, Edgecombe, Johnson being the top 5 players in the draft. Prospect-wise, We now have a trade happening with Kevin Durant, so now he is now a new member of the Houston Rockets. Phoenix Suns do get back pick number 10, so now they have their own selection once again. We'll see who they try to replace Kevin Durant with in this upcoming NBA draft, and we'll see what the rest of the NBA teams can do this upcoming week. This has been Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside by my co-host Andrew Johnson for the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your day.